I started following you, I don't even remember when. I don't think I was pregnant yet. And you were like the coolest mom. And I was like, this is who I want to be. And so I was just very inspired by you.
Thank you. What's a cool mom to you?
Hi.
We started by talking about the fact that we haven't actually met in person or like talk directly to each other, yet I feel like we're friends.
I totally agree. I feel like I know you and it feels natural. I'm very happy to be talking to you though.
Me too. I'm so excited. When I watch your content or just see you documenting your journey as a mom, it reminds me so much of my own journey, and that's why I wanted to have you here and chat a little bit because first of all, I'm just really curious about all the things you're going through. And then also selfishly, I feel like I want to talk about it to bring back some of my memories from the experience.
I love that. And also, I'm honored because I started following you. I don't even remember when. I don't even know if I don't think I was pregnant yet, but I was like, I knew we were going to start that stage soon. And you were like the coolest mom. And I was like, this is who I want to be. And so I was just very inspired by you. And so
Thank you.
this is
That's really
full
sweet.
circle moment for me.
What's a cool mom to you? I'm very curious because people say that and I have my own idea of that, but what is it for you?
I think it's just someone who hasn't lost their sense of self in being a mom. Like, I love the way that you dress and like that you're still trying, like you want to explore like your own creativity and your own sense of fashion and all of that kind of stuff. But then you're also like proud to be a mom and you're having fun with your boys. And it's just like, it's not like one thing has to go away because the other thing is shining, you know?
So have you always wanted to be a mom?
Yeah. I think like I always have loved children, and which is why I worked with kids for a long time, but there was like there was never really a question that I wanted to be a mom. It was like I knew everything would lead to that one day.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I applaud people that are naturally inclined. And maybe I'm saying that because, I mean, I got pregnant so young. I don't think I had an opportunity to start feeling that urge of, oh, I want to have kids.
Yeah.
And I feel like even my mom was surprised when I got married and started having children because she's like, oh, that's interesting. I did not expect that from you. So I love hearing about experiences of people that just, they always knew that they wanted to be a mother. Is it like this innate, like, what is it?
I guess I don't it was like it I guess it just to me, I don't even know. It was kind of just like it was never a question. Like it was
Mm,
not that I didn't like I knew I had an option. I knew like I could not be a mom if I didn't want to be, but like to me it was just it was always something I looked forward to. Like it was just always, and even when I met Cody, my husband, there was like there was a portion like a part where it was like we don't even have to get married as long as we're in this together and like we have kids and a family and like whatever, I'll be fine with that. So it's just always been something that I just have like known I'd be good at. And I don't actually know if that's true now that I'm like pregnant and like getting ready to give birth. I'm like, do I want to do this? I'm terrified. But like it was like it feels very natural to me. Like I feel like being around kids and taking care of kids is like a very natural state that when I'm in it.
you'll definitely have less resistance, I feel, than a lot of people because, I always get questions, and I'm sure you do too, from my community asking, like, when did you feel you were ready, right? Like, how
Right.
does this ready feel? How does it look like?
Right.
And I have to say, I don't really know the answer.
Yeah.
For me, my readiness was shown to me through Gary, because when I met Gary and I felt the way I felt, I was like, okay, I guess this is what ready feels like.
Yeah.
But what was it for you?
I don't know. I think it's one of those things where it's like you you're never gonna be 100% ready, until you just take the leap. Because like as much as I knew I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to have kids, it was like once you're actually pregnant, then you're like, okay, we're doing this. I'm ready and it's happening. So we're gonna just jump right in because leading up to it, like as much as I knew I wanted to do it, it was like, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if we want to travel or whatever? Because you all of a sudden think that you can't do anything else. And it's just scary. But then it's like once you just jump in and you're just actually in it, you're like, okay, whether I'm 100% ready or not, we're doing it and we're going to figure it out and it's going to be okay.
And talking about like practicality, because I feel like that's a real thing to talk about for young couples when it comes to starting a family. Because these days, I mean, the world is crazy, it's really expensive to have a child. There's so many things we have
Right.
to think about now,
Right.
even in terms of the support that we have. Because it's just, to me, it is harder to raise kids today. Although I feel like we're more privileged and have more access to things, there's also just like a lot of noise and we just know so much that it, in a way, creates like a whole other layer of anxiety in our lives as
Right.
parents.
Right.
So when you started talking, and if you had really the talk of, okay, we're going to have kids, did you talk about these practical things before starting a family?
We did, especially like, money and where we're going to live and that kind of stuff was always a big conversation where we wanted to raise them. Cody's from Canada. I grew up in LA. So like it was always like we had a lot of conversations like that. There is so much other outside noise that I think, we didn't grow up with that
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about it, but at the same time, it's like it's so constantly changing. And like, I don't even think like my parents could have never guessed what the world would be like now, and they could have like what would happen. So I feel like it's almost we can try and prepare for that side of things, but like I have no idea what's going to happen. I know
Yeah.
I know like what I can instill in my children and like how I can raise them and like that's what Cody and I can control and how they go into the world and how they approach situations, but like I don't know what the world is going to be like. But I
I
have
know.
enough like I we just knew how we wanted to raise them. Then that's the kind of stuff that we would talk about.
I love that because I had a conversation with one of my best friends, and she just got married, and she was very excited to get pregnant. But she called me the other day, and she's like, you know what? I'm really scared. Like I don't know if I'll be able to carry all this anxiety and fear if I'll
Right.
bring a child,
Right.
right? Because it's a lot of like you have to digest it, and you really have to navigate your inner, world in order to create an environment for the child to thrive. And I
Right.
think that for a lot of people, I mean, we talk about it all the time these days, which is wonderful, like the mental health. Everyone, in a way, feels like we're all in a mental health crisis in one way or another because of the state of the world, because of the access, because of all this information.
Right.
And I just feel like it's that fear is real. Like I even had to ask myself, if I knew all the things that I know now, would I go for it? Like, would I have 3 kids? Obviously, now I have my kids, and they're these souls, and they're the most amazing thing that I've ever experienced. But it's a real question.
Yeah, it totally is. But the thing is, I think it's like we're also kind of learning how to navigate so much of it for the first time because it's new to us as well. And like I know what works for me when I approach like the world and the internet and everything we have access to. And I know it works for my relationship when we decide what we're going to share and what we're not going to share. And so I feel like we're learning and we've learned to navigate these kind of things ourselves. And the only thing we can do is like teach our kids the same thing and just help them navigate it. And we're all kind of in it together. And it just really like comes down to like the foundation in your house and like with your family. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like when
Absolutely.
that's strong, the unknown stuff and the stuff that we're all being exposed to and whatnot, we can figure that out together as long as like it's strong in here.
Yeah. And speaking about like the foundation to build, how was your foundation as a child? Like, how do you remember your childhood?
It was wonderful. I'm so lucky to say that like I had a wonderful childhood and I had two very loving parents who loved each other very much and loved my brother and I, or love each other very much and love my brother and I. And it was like a tight knit unit, and it still is. Like I mean, I'm still we're there's like 30 minutes away from me and see them all the time. So it was I was lucky. It was a very safe space growing up.
What are you going to bring to that space? I mean, for your new family now, do you feel like, I mean, obviously these are wonderful things to bring in. Is there anything else you feel you're going to implement as a parent on this new journey?
I'm not like there's nothing I like saw my parents do that I'm like I definitely want to do that differently. But I think kind of along the line.
I think it'll be very interesting for you once
Oh,
you
for
going to
sure. I
have
mean, I
your
think I
baby.
know, like, I don't know. It's so hard to say, but I think as long as I really just, my parents always made me feel very safe in being who I am. And as long as
Hmm.
I like allow my kids that same space, I feel like I'll be doing something right.
I think mentally you're in a very beautiful place because I remember myself and I had all these ideas in my head of the mother I'm going to be and how it's going to look like. And, you know, even being very judgmental around certain small little things around me, like seeing a family or a child does this, I'll be like, my child would never do that.
Right.
My child would never do this.
Right.
And it was such a humbling experience to actually become a mother and
Yeah.
to go through all the stages. And I mean, I'm sure you worked with kids, you had much more access and understanding of
Yeah.
all of it. So I feel like you have a way more realistic view of it than I did. But let me tell you, it was like the universe was like, haha,
Right. Right.
remember that time when yeah, here
I
you
feel like
go.
it's one of those things where it's like and it's the same thing even with like giving birth. Like you think
Yeah.
like you have a whole plan or like what you want to happen when you get to the hospital and it's going to be this and whatever, but like you actually truly have no idea how it's going to actually happen. The planning can just like bite you in the ass sometimes
Yeah.
because you actually cannot plan for anything. And so I feel like it's the same thing with kids where it's like my kids are I something I always used to say was like my kids will always be wearing shoes wherever they go. Every time I saw a barefoot kid, I'd be like, no, if I want my kid to wear the shoes, they're gonna wear the shoes and blah blah blah. And now I'm like, there's a really good chance my kid is gonna be like, no, the fuck, I'm not wearing shoes. Sorry, and like I'm gonna need
Absolutely.
to get to the place in time, and my kid's gonna be barefoot. And so I know that, but I'm like,
Hmm.
as long as they just feel like safe to be themselves and loved, I'll be doing something right. And it's not going to be that easy all the time. You're always going to feel like you could be doing something differently or something more. And especially with all of the things you see online now, because I think there's so many opinions and so many
Yeah.
moms telling you like what works for them in a sense that they think it would work for everyone, but that's not the case. And so it's like I'm like trying to just take everything with like a grain of salt when it comes to like approaching this new journey.
It just reminded me with the experts, because I always say stay wary from the experts, and in general, like that scares me, and I'll never forget where it started for me. When I was a first-time mom, when I had Jake, I think he was maybe 3 or 4 months old. I picked up my first parenting book, and I started reading it. And literally, second chapter in, I was bawling my eyes out. I took this book, I threw it across the room, and I never picked up another parenting book again.
Right.
Because to your point, it felt very judgmental.
Yeah.
I was in a very vulnerable place. And, now we have these experts, and some of them are real experts. Other ones are a bit more like quote unquote experts. And I think that because now they're so much more accessible and all of us digest all this information every single day, they catch moms that may be in very vulnerable kind of situations, or whenever we feel like we're doing something, and that's usually in every aspect, as a parent, that you're not doing enough or you're not excelling at it, or
Right.
when you see things like that, or these advices or these kind of methods, it makes you feel worse about yourself. It's like, by us trying to be better, it actually really hinders our ability to be this present, like loving, flawed parent.
Right. And I feel like I totally agree. And I think being present is so much more important than like, because like exactly what you're saying, like when you're trying to do everything perfectly and you're completely not in the moment with your kid, you're thinking about something else because you're worried that you're not doing the right thing with him, when really he just like wants your
just
love.
Your attention.
Yeah.
Have you read or seen anything that made you anxious about becoming a mother for the first time?
I think a lot of the things that I see about like postpartum make me anxious, just because it's a lot of heavy stuff and I know it's heavy, and I'm like trying to prepare the best I can for that. But I think like seeing that kind of stuff starts getting me in my head a little bit. Because
like what specifically?
Just like, I guess just about how like I know that there's a lot of hormones and the big hormone drop and all of these things happen inside of your body that are just insane to me. But I also think it's like if you don't lay down enough at the beginning, you're gonna like your postpartum depression is gonna get really bad, and like you like and I understand that it's like it's trying to tell you to like just give yourself grace. And so that's like the part that I'm trying to take from it. But I think I get in my own head that I'm like gonna do something wrong and then become like very depressed. And I just don't think that, and I like, it's like I reasonably know that that's not the case necessarily, but like sometimes you see a lot of, I love that people feel like they can be honest online now about their experiences. I really do.
Yeah.
Like, not everything is perfect, and it never has been, and I'm happy people are sharing that now. But sometimes I like feel myself like I just get like a sigh of relief when someone's like, I've actually been okay. It's been okay.
Right.
It's tough, but I've been generally okay. I'm like, okay, that's good.
Like the middle.
Yes.
Because you're absolutely right, actually. It's interesting because on one hand, I remember when I had my kids, I mean, I had Jake in 2013. I wasn't as active on social media, but I was already on Instagram. I was following some mommy bloggers, and it was purely picture perfect. Like it was so perfect that I just told myself I could never measure up. That's just not what I'm about.
Yeah.
And then I feel like now we moved to this place of like sharing so much
Right.
and being so vulnerable
Yeah.
and really highlighting all the negatives in a way, which
Yeah.
I know comes from a good place,
Totally.
but it's the same effect as the picture perfect, right? Because
Yeah.
you look at it and then you're starting developing this anxiety about what's to come.
Yes, exactly. Like I, as someone who shares my life online, like I make sure that I'm always honest about how I'm feeling about things. I always make sure that like I'm honest about my relationship. I think a lot of times people that post their relationships online make it seem like they've never had a fight a day in their
Mm,
lives, and I think that's like not very healthy. So like I always try to be honest, but I think sometimes not try. I mean, I always am honest about how I'm feeling like with my audience, but I think sometimes the like we said, the oversharing of like the doom just
yeah.
weighs pretty heavily on me, especially because there is so much unknown with having a baby and hormones and all of that. Like nothing, there's not one way that it goes ever. And so it's like there's just a lot of like unknown, and then so when I hear a lot about this like impending doom that's approaching for my life as soon as I have this baby, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm ready, you know? So it's
Yes.
tough.
It's a lot. I mean, I feel like the one thing I didn't hear a lot about when I was pregnant was the fourth trimester. I
Right.
think that, I mean, obviously, there's so much information. I read the book cover to cover from like what to expect when expecting, and I
Mhm.
kind of knew what to expect, and I was okay with all the changes. But once I gave birth and that fourth trimester hit, I was so lost and so clueless.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back, it's exactly where you're supposed to be. You're
Right.
supposed to be lost and clueless because that's, the time for the hormonal imbalance and you're settling into your new role and your new identity and all the
Right.
things. So
Right.
it's definitely a very confusing time.
Yeah.
But I just wish someone was like, it's going to be really confusing. So like nothing is wrong with you. It's just, it is what it is.
That and like that, I totally agree. That is like perfect advice. That's the kind of the advice where I'm like, okay, great.
You're
That's
right.
cool.
I'm going to surrender and
Yeah,
see
like
what's going to happen.
I'm happy to know that it's going to be confused. Like that's the perfect like balance of like it's not going to be perfect, but it's also it's going to be okay. You know? I
Hmm.
think a lot of the times I just feel like it's not going to be okay when I see certain things online. But like just what you just said makes me feel like, okay, I can handle that.
Of course you can handle it. And it's interesting because I also feel like that's when I've also went through my self-identity crisis.
Hmm.
It was all at the same time, which again makes sense because you give birth to a baby, but you also give birth to a new you.
Right.
Have you gone through the process of like thinking about that, about your identity and how it's going to shape and change?
I've thought about it a lot. I do think it's one of those things where it's like kind of a mystery right now because I don't
Hmm.
know what it's going to be like when he's here. But I even feel like being pregnant, you have the potential to like lose your sense of self a bit because there's so much changing inside of you and so much changing physically and sometimes socially, and like there is just so much change that happens when you're pregnant.
What were some of the changes?
First, I mean, like obviously like my body is completely different than it once was, but also like I mean the first trimester I was just crying all the time, and like it's like there's just a
Mm,
lot of like hormonal changes. And then also it's funny because I feel like I'm in a place in my life right now where half of my friends have newborns and then half of them are like just out and about, out on the town, like having just doing their thing. And so
just
it's like
living their lives. Yeah.
yes, and so it's like finding a balance between that was interesting, but it's just been a lot of different changes, and you're also changing like what you are doing week to week. Like I'm going to the doctor a lot more, and we're taking hospital classes, and like we're getting a nursery ready, and we're doing things that like were not on the docket last year, you know?
Yeah.
And something that like has made me feel more me is like just clothing. Not like surprisingly enough, like just wearing stuff that I would wear not pregnant, making it work pregnant wise has made me feel like more me, which I know
I
is like
love that.
it
That's
can be
very,
like shallow, I don't know,
yeah,
but like it makes me like people are like, "Oh, I stopped wearing jeans the second I got pregnant." And I'm like, "But I like wearing jeans. Like I don't want to stop. I don't want to like get too pregnant to where I'm like, okay, well, I guess sweats it is." Like, and I trust me, I'm wearing plenty of sweats. I was doing that before, but like it's just I don't want to like lose that part of me just because like my body's changing and things are changing, or like if our friends are going out to dinner and then getting a drink after, like a lot of people are always like, "Oh, I understand you're probably tired, so you don't want to come." But it's like, no, I can go. Like I can, if I want to go, I can still. I'm a human. Like I'm still the same me. I'm just
right.
pregnant, and it's okay. Like I'm obviously like won't put myself or my baby in any harm's way, but like I can like be social still, and like I think people forget that.
There's definitely a lot of changes, and I think that these changes are preparing you for the inevitable change that's going to happen. I think it's so wonderful that you are keeping small, not even small, but like elements that make you feel good and make you feel like yourself. But it's either way, like I feel like once your baby boy is here, it's going to be even more of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you had, we're just talking about how, talking about the kind of negatives or like the sad or difficult things, it's a lot, it can give you anxiety. But the question of like mourning yourself once your baby's here and you fully like in that mom mode,
Yeah.
that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I did not expect that to happen.
Yeah.
I did not think it's going to feel like the mourning of my old self, because I think that a lot of the times the way having children and becoming a mother is presented to us, it's obviously a beautiful new beginning. It's a new chapter. And I think there's this expectations of you're so happy and you're so content and fulfilled, and this is the most beautiful thing ever. And you're so lucky because you really are to have the opportunity to have a healthy baby.
Mhm.
But there is this aspect of sadness and acceptance of the things that I was before is I'm leaving it behind.
Right.
And that's okay, but that also brings this like feeling of guilt in a way, right? I think like we haven't created the space yet to have the duality of being extremely excited for this new chapter,
Mhm.
but then also making space to being sad and like sitting in it, when
Right.
it comes to your kind of older version of yourself. Have you ever thought about that duality?
I feel like I've heard about obviously that happening. And so when I first got pregnant, I was like really scared of that. And then like last week I had another moment where I was like, this is my life now, like just like freaking out, and was like, nothing is ever going to be the same again. That is now just like a thing of the past. But I think like going back to like the reason I started following you, like I think seeing like your kids are older now, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like it's like gives me hope that like I can find myself again after,
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think I know that there is like a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what keeps me going. But I know it's not going to be easy at first, especially when he's first here and everything is different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for my husband too. I think it's like it's just hard in general. And so I think it's not going to be easy, but like it's not permanent. And I have to remind myself of that.
Yes, I think that's the biggest thing to remember, that there's these phases or seasons, there's
Mhm.
seasons to every age, to every stage you're in.
Mhm.
For your husband as well, it's actually been really interesting to watch Gary's transformation as he becomes a father,
Yep.
because it took me a few years to really feel comfortable in my role as a mother.
Mhm.
I gave birth, but it didn't necessarily activate all the things I thought it's going to activate.
Yeah.
It took time for me, probably the first 2-3 years, to stop resisting the change, to
Yeah.
surrender to the change, to being okay with, this is how life looks like now,
Mhm.
not having the constant FOMO,
Yeah.
looking at other people and other lives and what I
Right.
used to do and what I thought I'm going to be doing. And it took a few years, and even connect to my child in a deeper way.
Yeah.
And I remember with Gary, I had a bit of a bone to pick with him in the beginning, because I thought, okay, that's it. We're becoming parents. The child is out. Let's go. Put your dad hat on. We're going. And he also didn't really know where to position himself and like how
Yeah.
to approach the role. He did all the things, right? He was holding it, he was feeding him, but I could see that the connection is not necessarily all there.
Right.
And even the need for him to be nurturing wasn't necessarily there.
Yeah.
So I remember I had to sit him down and be like, listen, I'm kind of disappointed. Like, I feel you're not showing up like the way I expected you to show up. And Gary is extremely wise. And he told me, it's taking me time to get into it, but I also feel like it's not my time to shine right now. Right now, I'm just, I pick up and do whatever I can do, but I'm really going to step into my role when they're a little bit older.
Yeah.
And he's like, you just have to trust me. And again, this is also something you don't really talk about until you experience it, right? Because you don't know how we all have our timeline as parents, how we get into this role and how it feels and how it fits, and changing, our narratives around it and the dialogue around it. And he told me, like, you'll know when it's time, like you'll see that I'm showing up. And I mean, now thank God I trusted him and he did his thing. I mean, he's excelling at it. But that was a hard one to kind of go through, right? When you have these expectations of the kind of parent you're going to be, or your partner's going to be. There's like so much inside of that as well.
Yeah.
And we're all going to experience it in such different ways. And I'm very excited for your journey, because I want to ask you the questions of like, how do you think it's going to look like? But to your point, we don't really know. You don't know until you experience it and you're in it.
Yeah.
And you're navigating it, your best ability and what's best for your family. So, but it's truly a trip. Like, wow. Now that we're talking about it, and I'm just getting flooded with all these memories and emotions when I was pregnant with my first.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild. Like I don't even know how else to explain it. Like I still almost every day I'm like, I cannot believe I'm pregnant. Like I can't believe this is happening. And time just keeps moving, and it's just gonna get sooner and sooner, and he's gonna be here before we know it. It's just crazy.
I know you did an episode about attachment styles, and I kind of dove into it also a couple of months ago, which was very interesting to me. Did you learn about your attachment style? You have a clear understanding of what it is?
I mean, I guess so. I talked about it on my podcast with like a dating expert. And then I also learned about it when I was studying child development in at university. So it's like I feel like I've gotten different aspects of it because I feel like my attachment style changed from when I was a kid to when I had like my
An
own like
adult.
adult life experiences. Kind of makes things change a little bit. And then it also changed again once I like got married or like once I met Cody. Like I feel like things changed again. And I feel like it's not one of those things that's
There's
just,
just one way
yeah, it's not
forever.
right. I think it can change, but it is so interesting when you think about like your relationships and why maybe things are the way they are. I think I used to be a lot more anxiously attached than I
Mm,
am now. I think I have a much more like secure, sorry, very clingy animals in this house. I think I'm much more securely attached now in general. But lately I've been thinking so much more about my childhood just because I'm, you know, having a baby, obviously. And I realized just you realize certain things like it was never so much about like my parents that made me anxious. Like I think my grandpa passed away really unexpectedly when I was like 7. And it was like very intense and very unexpected and it was just an intense experience. And I think that I didn't realize it until recently, but I'm like that made me anxious that like my parents were going to just go away out of nowhere one day or
mm.
it like that. And I didn't think about because you only think about like how your parents kind of raised you, but you don't think about the other
The
things that have
experiences
happened.
that raised you. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like when it comes to raising my kids, I'm not going to be able to control that kind of stuff. And it's going to be, those kind of things are going to be like what shapes them. And it's not always going to be in my control as their parent, to be able to make sure that they're securely attached when they get older because nothing ever happened. Because like, my parents unfortunately could not control what happened when I was 7.
That's a huge realization, by the way.
Yeah.
That's huge. Like that took me, I feel like that realization hit me a year ago.
Yeah.
And I have, Jake is 10 years old. So it took me a long time to understand that I won't be able to control these fundamental things because I can do what I can do, but they are going into the world and they're experiencing the world in their own way. And I don't want to get in the way of that.
Exactly. Because it's like, it's not fair to not let them experience those things. How else are they going to learn? And I mean, it's the same thing with like dating, even. Like, I know my parents weren't stoked on a lot of the people I was bringing home, before before Cody, but like it's not like they were like, okay, she'll learn, you know?
Yeah.
And like you can only do so much as one parental unit.
There's also even an interesting thing that I was discussing with a friend of mine who is going through kind of a period with her young child where she just gets very anxious and very frustrated. And my friend, who is an amazing mother, is trying to explain to her, why something is happening. And we're talking about it. And I was kind of thinking, you know what? It's interesting how we explain why something happened to the kids, but it's the why is coming from our point of view,
Totally.
from our experiences, from our perspectives, with our own kind of history, right? So how useful is it, or how, I don't want to say damaging, but like misleading is it? Like, are we kind of hijacking their ability to process it in their own way, right? There's kind of like a lot of things, and all of that you're going to you're going to go through, right? When your child is older, and especially as they're getting older. Right now, I find myself daily in situations where I know that I want to help and I want to make them feel better, but I don't want to hijack that emotional knowledge that they're right now acquiring through their own experience.
Right, exactly. Because like you don't want to project your feelings onto them. I think it's even like it's in like a simple form. It's like when I was teaching, when a child would fall and get hurt, and instead of being like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" like freaking out when they might have really hurt themselves, like approaching them calmly and just being like, "Hey, oh, that might have hurt. Like, what? Are you okay?" Just instead of just throwing the fear onto them, because then they see that you're scared, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I should be scared. I should be scared about this, actually. This is actually scary because this person is freaking out in my face." And so it's like you can't, as scary as like something could be to you, you can't show them that almost because you don't want them to take that on.
Yeah.
It's like that's not going to be easy. I'm like a control freak. If I'm going to want to tell my kids how they should feel, but like you can't do that.
I mean,
you know?
We all do, yeah, but that's part of our own process. I feel like my kids have been my greatest teachers in the way that I see the world and the way I process my childhood and my like traumas and all the things. That's why becoming a parent is also needs to come with, yes, you are raising a child, but you're also kind of re-raising yourself in a way.
Right.
Because you want to be the strongest, for your child. So you are willing to step in and do all that work on yourself.
Yeah.
And that just exposes a lot of things, throughout the years of things that you might not even known was there.
Yeah.
And also there's just ability to accept the fact that you're going to be changing over and over and over again. You know what I'm curious about, you guys? I mean, both you and Cody your careers is social media. You're online, you share a lot of your lives together and separately. And did you ever have a conversation about how it's going to look like when you're going to have kids?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about it. I think luckily Cody and I mean, we kind of started this conversation even when it just had to do with our relationship and our engagement, then our wedding, like kind of just everything. We've always kind of talked about it because sharing your life online is a wonderful thing, but it also invites a lot of other people's opinions and excitement, which is amazing. But also like just a lot of people knowing a lot about you that maybe they normally wouldn't. And luckily, Cody and I both kind of lived pretty normal offline lives until our like early 20s, and which is still young, but like at least we like, there was a lot of developmental stuff that happened that we got to experience more offline. And so we've always been very much on the same page of like, this is what we're going to share, but let's keep these things to ourselves. And so when it came to like having kids, we're very much on the same page of like what we're going to share, what we're not going to share. I think it's one of those things where it's like, it's just like somebody else that's involved now. It's not just our wedding. It's not just where we're getting married. It's not, certain things like that. It's like an actual it's a real person's life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we've talked a lot about it. I think it's finding a balance of like what we're going to share about him and about our experiences. I think we'll be doing a lot of talking about our experiences as parents, but like when it comes to sharing personal things about him, I don't I think we'll probably tread pretty lightly,
Mm-hmm.
especially at the beginning, and then kind of see how things are going. But I think we both are erring on the side of caution.
My experience is a little different because I already had Jake and Ben when I got on social media.
Yeah,
And I have to say that, to your point, the idea that there's so many people that, want to see more of the kids, and that write the sweetest thing being like, this made my day, and
right.
when I'm feeling down, I go and watch the family videos. Like, all of that was such a beautiful experience for us, but also created this need to show more,
Yeah,
because I was seeing what a beautiful positive impact it
right,
had on people.
right.
So we were sharing and sharing, and then without even realizing, I did feel this kind of guilt whenever I didn't show them. Like, people would,
Right.
whenever we started pulling away from showcasing them, people were like, what about the kids? Like, when you want to see the kids, where are the kids?
Yeah,
And it was very interesting because it was the first time where I kind of stepped back, being like, oh, this is kind of weird that people have these expectation, to see someone else's kids.
right,
And we very much started pulling away to protect them and to create a safe space for them, honestly, just feeling free and walk around the house and not just being alert when there's a camera around, or if a
right,
camera's going to pop out of nowhere.
right.
But it was kind of a constant checking in with each other and with myself to be like, are we really doing a positive thing?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
are we thinking about strangers before our kids?
right.
There was a lot of that
Yeah, it's
throughout.
tricky. It's like a weird thing to balance. And also, it's funny you mentioned the camera thing. Cody and I just got, because we use like obviously cameras every single day. There are cameras in our faces that we're pointing at ourselves. But like
Mm-hmm.
we got just a regular like camcorder that looks completely different. And we're like, this is going to be just like our family, like for our home videos for our kid one day. Cause I'm like, I don't want him
That's
to
so
associate
cute.
like the
His
camera.
childhood with YouTube.
Yes, exactly. And so we're like, let's just have a set. Like, I want to have home videos for him, but like, those will not be my vlogs. Like, I don't want those will not be the same thing. And so I don't want him to be like, oh, my mom's working and she's putting me in this video. And, I want it to be like, oh, mom's working. She has that camera. She's working. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not like,
Like cues.
yes.
I've been asking a lot of questions about the future of you, like a lot of hypothetical questions. So I want to like take it back to where you're at now. You're pregnant.
Yes.
When is the baby due?
Beginning of January.
So soon.
Yeah. Very soon.
And how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited right now. I mean, if you would have talked to me last week, I probably would have started crying. Like the emotions
Roller
and the mood
coaster.
swings are very present. But I'm feeling good. I'm excited. I think it's getting more and more real, and I think every week knowing that like he's okay and like
Mm,
that he would be okay if I went into labor early or something, that makes me more excited.
yes, there's also, you feel more, it's a more comforting to know that you kind of passed a certain stage where you're no longer in kind of like a risky stage.
Exactly.
With the kind of anxieties around pregnancy, it's so interesting. When I was pregnant, I was an anxious wreck for my first pregnancy, because here I think, as advanced as medicine is, they also, because they know so much, they also share a lot with you, and all the things that can go right and all the things that can go wrong. And obviously you hold on to the things that can go wrong every single day. So that's
Right.
very nerve-wracking.
Right.
And I remember sharing this with my mom, and I was like, how was it for you when you were pregnant with me? She's like, oh, no one cared. I saw the doctor when I had to give birth, like this was it.
Yeah.
They were so just nonchalant about it. And I was always just thinking, wow, the experience is so different these days.
Yeah.
How was the experience for you of just getting into seeing the doctors every day and checking the heartbeat and making sure he kicks?
Going to the doctors, hearing the heartbeat, that is great. I love all of that. Me personally having to count his kicks and whatnot has got me stressed out like no other.
And that was the doctor's direction, no?
Yeah, it's like do the kick counts, and I'm like, okay, and my poor doctor, I'm like, okay, but if he moves kind of like he swerves around, does that count as 1 or 2? And she's like, maybe 2, I'm not sure. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to know because you told me I have to count to 10, and now I'm trying, but I don't know what counts. So like, I definitely am overthinking a lot of that kind of stuff now. But I do like that we have more frequent doctor appointments now, so I can hear his heartbeat and stuff. But still, there's always something to worry about. And I mean, that's never going to change. Like, I'm going to be worrying forever now.
Forever.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. No, it's going to be beautiful. I'm very excited for you and Cody to begin this new chapter in your lives. And I think that both of you have a gift of sharing your lives in a really open, authentic, but also filled with humor and lightness. And I think that the baby will be just another way for you to tell your story, to experience new experiences and share it with the world. And I'm very excited to see how it all develops for you and for your call when Saturn return hits.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I'm gonna be calling you. I'm gonna be calling you a lot, honestly. Just being like,
honestly, call me anytime. Yeah. I have a book. I have a little notebook of all the experiences. I can just reference back to anything. But yeah, I think that if I can leave you with any advice, something that helped me immensely when I became a mother is making sure that I have the right support around me and just other women that are my village. Because I'm sure you know, because you already have friends that have newborns, it can be very, very lonely.
Yeah.
So I think just creating this beautiful circle of women that you can just call and cry to or laugh about things with. I think that really helped me get through so many of the challenges that I faced with as a new mom.
Yeah.
So there's a limit of how much you can do, and obviously everything is around the baby, but that's something to definitely keep in mind.
Yeah, I will 100% utilize my friends and all of that, and you now. So
yes, I'm here for you. Kelsey, thank you so much for sharing and being open about your experience. It's beautiful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, I'm so happy to talk to you, and I was very excited about this, and I just really appreciate it. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't miss my newest episode right here. And if you're listening to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, please go and leave a review with your biggest takeaway. I love reading your thoughts. And if you have any suggestions for guests or topics, you can leave them in the comment section. And always, always remember, you are not alone.